Now, for our first talk today, I would love to introduce Vitaly on stage from Adobe with his a talk about AEM Screens. Let's welcome Vitaly.
Thanks. So, hello and good morning. Thanks for joining me this sunny morning. My name is Vitaly Tsaplin. I work at Adobe Basel. I'm a computer scientist and a core developer of AEM Screens. So today I'm going to talk about the golden circle, which is the idea of golden circle was recently made popular by one of the fairly famous motivational speakers, Simon Sinek. It's about what, how, and why, and the idea here is about the fact that we often focus too much on what and how, and if we forget about the why, and the why is actually a core question. It drives. So the why actually drives the rest. If we forget about the why, then it shouldn't actually work. And a lot of successful companies actually focus first on why. So I like this idea, and I'd like to apply it to the rest of my talk. So I'll be telling you today about the whats, hows, and whys of screens. So let's get started. Well, first of all, what is AEM Screens? It's fairly simple. It's a digital signage solution from Adobe. So that's it. Thanks for attending. Technically, it means it's a feature, a built-in feature of AEM, and it's built on top of AEM sites. It should give you some hint already. We first introduced it in AEM 6.3, and we support everything upwards. But I don't think it's actually very helpful to tell you that it's just digital signage. I have to explain what digital signage is. So simply defined, digital signage is about using high-definition screens to broadcast multimedia content to a broad audience. So technically it means we have a network of high-definition screens. Each one has a little computer unit capable of rendering high-definition content, and it's either built-in if it's a smart panel, or mostly it's external unit. And all of them are connected to a central server so that the whole network is centrally managed, and every screen is individually addressable. So, of course, I have to mention the why. Why would you use this thing? There are a number of use cases, and a lot actually appearing. It's an emerging industry. For example, it could be public information, something like news, weather, traffic information. At the train station, you can see the timetable, it's all there. Internal information like corporate messages or event announcement, or if you want to book a room, a little signage screen in front of the room, it's also digital signage. Product information, pricing, photos, offers. One of the probably the most common use of digital signage is advertising and promotions, like Nike or Coke. Somewhere you see a lot of these messages. Influencing product or brand decision making. This is one of the most interesting probably, and we are trying to focus on this a lot. Let me give you an example. And the prototype was actually shown a few years ago at Adobe Marketing Summit. Imagine you enter the fashion store, and there is a mirror somewhere. And the mirror has a built-in camera, which takes a photo of you. It can detect your size and body parameters. And basically, it also knows about what they have on stock. And let's imagine you have an application on your phone which is a loyalty app. They also know who you are, and they are aware about your past purchase history. So basically, this thing can offer you an outfit. And it actually applies the picture of this outfit right on your photo. And it makes a lot of sense, because otherwise you would maybe leave the store not buying anything. But since you are given the really nice suggestion, or like a hint, you would probably buy something like this. So this way we can influence a customer behavior. And also, it's about enhancing customer experience. For example, recently, I was looking for an ATM in a big shopping mall. I couldn't find it. And basically, I actually used the digital signage screen. I just typed in the name of the bank, and it showed me how to get there. So it's wayfinding. In a museum, you can find, for example, in front of each item, a little screen. It's also about digital signage. I just mentioned that it's all about a computer unit, which is connected to the screen. Those are players. And for example, here, it's not something, it's actually from our recommendation list. Those players are actually used by our customers. Some of them are Windows boxes, some of them are running Android or, for example, Chrome OS at the bottom. And I actually brought a couple of devices, so if you want, I can show you this. Really quick, a brief history of screens. We started as a project context in 2012. I think it was an experiment in Adobe XD. They tried to use large screens to create a collaborative environment for creative people, for artists, for photographers, so that they could exchange photos and ideas. And I think that was in particular successful. So we took over in 2014, and in a year later, we presented a few prototypes at Adobe Marketing Summit during keynote. So we are here. A couple of words why actually Adobe is entering this market, because we are web experts. We know how to create web experiences. Actually, it's AEM. So why digital signage, which is like offline, which is in stores? There are two issues. First of all, customer experience online is really different from what they experience offline. There is a huge disconnection. And we have a lot of technological advancements in the web domain. But if you go to any store, you look at digital signage screen, it's very simple. It's usually just slideshow, it shows images. There is a huge disconnection. And the other problem is that online experiences and offline experiences are heavily disconnected. We need to connect them. For example, if you go to a showroom, you like something, you go back home, and it's not in your shopping cart. You need to look for this again. So we want to connect it. And so our goal is to actually bring online experiences to physical spaces. We want to connect it. We want to have this experiences connected. So here where web actually meets reality. And let me tell you another story. When I joined Adobe first, like 3 years ago, I started to work on this project. And I was fairly happy because for me, as for developer, it's actually a really interesting task because we had to deal with like a lot of fairly special operating systems, a lot of devices, gadgets, and sensors, and pretty much cutting-edge technologies like depth cameras. It's not in the core product, but we have a lot of use cases for that. But every time I came to a shopping mall and I saw the digital signage, I hated it. It was like something that we were doing. And then we had an exercise. We tried to figure out what is our why we are here, why we're doing it. And it's actually the problem that we are trying to address. We want to help customers and clients to find each other. So every time I go to a shopping mall, I don't see a smoking man there because I don't smoke and don't care. I see something that is actually relevant to me, something I'm looking for. So here's a few customers that we have right now. They trust us, so you should too. And for example, in the middle, you can see it's a huge casino in Vegas. And there's a huge screen on the strip. So this is screens. And we're kind of proud of it because it's kind of sensitive job. Imagine if it goes off or it shows like blue, black, or yellow screen of death. It's really not good. We're going to be on the news. Speaking of the product, I have to mention briefly the features. So first of all, you should know that this is, since it's built on top of AEM sites. So it's actually AEM sites. Everything you know about AEM sites, you can apply here. What we offer out of the box is slideshow component, which is the king in digital signage because it's usually some kind of slideshow. But when you use this component, it's actual AEM sites. You can drop there pretty much everything. It's not limited by just images or videos. You can use experience fragments or embedded pages or whatever you can imagine. When it comes to content assignment and scheduling, it's about the fact that you can actually assign your experience to a group of screens or one individual screen. And we also support very sophisticated scheduling rules, because you can, for example, you can tell it when exactly you want this content to be played. We are leveraging Context Hub, so basically AEM personalization and targeting, which means that your experiences that you create can be perfectly targeted, and it makes actually a lot of sense for digital signage, because the screen, a lot of people actually passing by the screen. We have to be aware what's going on around the screen. So it's like all sorts of face detection, face recognition, and some sensors, etc., beacons. It's all there. Offline playback. That was a tricky task, because everything that we create in AEM is online, is inherently online because it's web. But digital signage is offline. And the point is, when you use your browser, right now, you can make sure that's actually connected. Digital signage device is running 24 hours. And it's not always connected. If at some point it wants to read something, wants to fetch some resource from AEM, is going to be broken. So we have to make sure that everything is available offline. We offer out-of-the-box integration with Adobe Analytics, and it's also important for digital signage because they often use it for advertisement, and it's so-called proof of play. They have to know that something was actually shown, otherwise they don't get money. And last but not least, of course, remote device management. For example, Volkswagen has about 1,300 screens. It's a lot. You have to be able to remotely troubleshoot them, remotely check if they are off or on, something like this. So we offer a number of dashboards that help you to actually do this. Now really quickly about the architecture. Here you see this is 2 tiers, but we in fact support auto-publish mode. But it's kind of heavy stuff, and today one of our engineers actually is giving a talk on this. I think it's at 5 o'clock. It's AEM Jam session, so if you are interested, you can check it out. But here, just to simplify it, I'm showing a 2-tier, and there are 2 major building blocks. Well, AEM, you're kind of aware about it, but the player, I'll talk about the player first. We have chosen the hybrid approach. So it's actually cross-platform layer, and almost 90 or 95% of the code is cross-platform. It runs in WebView, but obviously WebView has a lot of limitations. For example, we have to guarantee that the content that is cached in the player is actually 100% available. But web rendering engine has limitations. It treats everything as a cache. So once it comes to some limit, some certain threshold, it starts actually removing stuff from there. This is what we cannot afford. So we have a bunch of native extensions. For example, we use native operating system to actually store content there. Or, for example, if you want to remotely take a screenshot or restart the device, we also need native extensions. And obviously, this device is connected to a screen via HDMI, but you also can plug some other stuff. For example, we have a use case where we use a badge reader. We plug it in, and if you use your badge, then you can change something on the screen. Or since it's actually AEM personalization, Context Hub, and segmentation, you can consume pretty much any web service you can imagine. For example, it could be a screen, and you, for example, fetch some weather data. And depending on this data, you can show either umbrella or sunglasses, depending on if it's sunny or cloudy. About the backend, you probably are fairly familiar with this. It's just AEM, so we have a number of OSGI services there, some RESTful APIs, and also UI, which we call DCC, Device Control Center. And a couple of words about the communication between these two. It's fairly simple, like in a nutshell. It works in a way that player pings constantly the backend, like maybe once every 5 seconds. And backends then figures out if there is a change. If there is a change in the player config or in the content, then it will respond with the data. And if the content was changed, so we send back a manifest. If you've heard about HTML5 manifest, it's similar to this. It's a list of files, a list of resources that have to be available offline, along with hash values, and then player will parse it and figures out what's missing, and then it will fetch it. That's basically it. A couple of words about the technology stack. You know about AEM. I will not focus on it because it's like Java, JavaScript, but Flare is more interesting. As I said, our cross-platform layer is HTML, JS, and ES6 actually. We recently migrated to S6. And to create platform binaries, we use a number of frameworks like Cordova, for example, to generate Android binaries, or Electron to generate Windows binaries, and potentially Linux. We also support Chrome OS, but since it's JavaScript, it's actually handwritten. Now let me quickly show you a walkthrough the UI, so you have some idea at least about the product. Here is unified dashboard, AEM dashboard, and here we are. This is Screens home. So please visit us. Just double click and you are here. Well, first of all, you need to create a project. But there is a difference from sites. In sites, as far as I know right now, you need to use Maven and archetypes to create the project, the very basic stuff. In Screens, you don't need to do this, just one button click, and you have a project. So beneath the project, we have few folders. They are actually folders. I'll quickly go through them just to give you some idea. By applications, we mean some custom applications. So, for example, we can have an entry point, and then if you have some custom stuff, like really website, you can refer to this. And this goes usually to applications. Locations, that's basically the way to group displays. Because let's say you have 1,000 displays. It could be a flat list, but it's not really manageable. So you create locations. Those are actually folders. It could be arbitrary complex, but in the end, there is always a display. A display is a logical display. It's basically a representation of a physical display like this or like there. Now, channels. By channel, we mean it's something, you can think about it as about Screens application. It's like an entry point. It's a high-level entity that represents a consistent piece of experience. Like a website, if you want. It could have some content underneath, or it could reference something else like an application. But overall, it's like a piece of experience that you assign as a whole to a display, and there's something which is being shown as like a consistent piece. Schedules is a more advanced topic. It's about the fact that you can assign multiple channels, but if you don't really want to do it every time, you create a group of these assignments and assign the whole group as a whole. And devices, here we have Device Manager, which is basically about registering new devices and managing devices. So let me now show you a display. This is a very important concept. So let's go to a display dashboard. So it's fairly simple. There is some basic information about the screen, like its resolution, etc. But these two panels are important. Assigned channel means that's a list of experiences that were assigned to this display, which basically means this display is supposed to show this, let's call them websites. And we use a number of scheduling rules to evaluate, because display can show just one thing at a time. So we use some evaluation rules like priority and etc., a lot of things to figure out what is supposed to be shown right now. The list of devices is basically devices that are assigned to the display. Device represents a physical display. So display acts as a link between your experiences and actually physical displays. This way you can tell that this particular channel is supposed to be shown on this particular physical display, which is mounted somewhere. Now let me show you the content. So under the channels, we have content. And now let me quickly show you the device. So if you open the dashboard, here you see there is one device which is actually heart beating. The one is connected right now. And if we open its dashboard, it also shows some basic information here. You can see that's actually pinging. You can take a screenshot of it, so you can see what's actually shown there, actually. You can change some settings. You can retrieve logs to troubleshoot it and update firmware or clear its cache. And this device is actually here. Well, it's supposed to be running on a box. But since I don't want to really mess around with the cabling, so I ran this on my machine. We offer like Chrome OS player, which you can run on your Mac. We also offer Windows binaries and Android binaries if you have a virtual machine or a physical device. You can actually play around with this, and I will give you a link how to download the player. So it actually shows some experience. It's interactive. You can click on it, and something happens. You can click on this. Yeah, it actually reacts. So now let's get back to the channel that I showed you. It's actually idle channel. So let me show you this channel, how it's defined. It's on the channels here, idle channel. So technically it's just CQ page. So nothing fancy. You can edit it the way you used to, and you know how to do it, just sites. In the end, so it's a sequence of elements. Basically, these little squares are transitions. So you make it just animating nicely. If I switch to preview mode, it looks like this. So pretty much the same what you've seen in the player. You can change it just by dragging and dropping. It's just size editor. Let's try to change it to something like this. And in preview mode, we see it. Good. Now, if we go to the channel dashboard, there is a little trick. We need to generate offline content, which is not usually the case if you use author-publish, because in author-publish deployment, we can detect. If you publish stuff, we can detect it on a publish farm, what happens, and we generate this content automatically. This is author-only. It's about for developers, for experts. It's actually much easier, but the cost is that you need to press this button. You need to generate the content manually. And now if we open the player, it's actually syncing, and now you see the content. Now it's available offline. Everything is downloaded and supposed to work even without any connectivity. That's good. Now we're going to switch back to the presentation. So I wanted to, since you know how to use the thing now, I wanted to tell you, maybe you want to extend it. Maybe you want to add some more components to this, because like for example, SPA or something like this. So it's actually AEM sites. There is no difference. But there are some technical aspects that you need to be aware about. The most of our components are supposed to be embeddable in a sequence channel because we generate slideshows. And second, as you maybe noticed here in the UI, if I switch to edit, actually here, every component in preview mode is shown in full screen. But in edit mode, it's actually like this, and it should be individually, like selectable. You should be able to remove it. That means that we have to support two different renderings of this component depending on authoring mode. So how we do it? You will probably find the other way, but we consistently follow these practices. Well, first of all, to address the first, the fact that you need to embed it, you just need to inherit from Parbase. Fairly simple. But about supporting two modes, we do it the way, so we basically create a root component. And it contains nothing else but this conditional statement. We either include a production version of it or edit version of it, depending on the mode. Fairly simple. When it comes to client libraries, it's also simple. Because we have two different modes, we have these three categories. You just need to include your stuff into one of these categories. It's either CQ Screens components, if it's shared, or .edit if it's just for edit mode, or .production if it's just for production mode. And one more thing, I have to also mention it for completeness. we leverage, maybe you know about content sync. We improved it actually significantly. We call it Smart Sync because we use manifests, not zips anymore. But just quickly, the way we create offline content. We do it the way, we know about the entry point. We know the CQ page that you want to have there. So we render it server-side. Then we scan it. We use so-called update handlers. And we try to find all the dependencies that it needs because we have to copy all the stuff so that it's all offline. Then we generate offline cache. We call it shadow tree. And then we generate manifest that we send to the player. It parses it, and it figures out what's missing and can pull additional resources, etc. Sometimes we fail to find everything because we don't execute JavaScript server-side. If it's single-page application, we don't know. Sometimes you just need something to be available there. So we create offline config node, and underneath, write in your content, and then you create a sub-nodes, and this is exactly how you should do. There is a handler, update handler, which does not actually parse anything. It just copies stuff, and you tell it where you have your files. And then we will simply scan everything beneath this node. We take everything, all the files, and we will copy to the cache. So it will be available in the player. That's actually all about extending. Now about references, we have a user guide. We often use it as well because it's really nicely written. We have our players on macromedia.com. It's freely available. You can download them. You can start playing with players. We have on GitHub, it's also open source. We have a project which contains a lot of use cases. It's like really a lot. It could be about using experience fragments with screens, or personalizations with screens, or analytics with screens. Everything which is just, you can get this code and check it out and try to hack it, play with it. It's up to you. So what I wanted to do, I wanted to encourage you to actually start looking into this. And not only it's actually emerging industry, but it's interesting. It's about breaking the virtual silo, because that's exactly where you can try to play with sensors and stuff like this, with gadgets, because it's a physical space. It's fairly interesting. And we have a lot of use cases in mind. And we have a limited capacity. We often focus only on the core development, but there are so many different use cases. And pretty much everything imaginable you can do with this. You can also use screens as a stage for your innovative ideas, because it's everything that is shown on the big screen we can actually do. You can use screens as a vehicle to deliver it to like a huge display here. That's actually it. If you have any questions, you can ask now.
Well, if not, or is there? No, if not, then thank you for your talk, Vitaly.
Yeah.